Hey Summoners, make sure that you've subscribed to the Mobalytics YouTube channel and hit that bell button. That way you're always up to date and part of our notification squad. Welcome back to the Mobalytics 9.11 update and Q&A video. I'm your challenger coach, Adam Moriarty Isles, here to take you through all the changes and questions you had. As a disclaimer, I'd like to mention that we only update the normal list as of right now, as the high-ELO one wouldn't really have a big enough data set to make an update worthwhile at this point in time. Now with that out of the way, let's jump right into the update. For the top lane list, we have no changes, meaning Nasus, Garen, Yorick, Urgod, and my successful pick of the week prediction, Tahm Kench, remain in S-tier. Speaking of TK, a common trend in top lane OP picks over the years is, whenever a top lane champion, such as the current TK, or the pre-100 nerfs to the Sion update, are dominating the lane phase, they just become too consistent and impactful of a pick. This is because tanks inherently scale well, as they provide great team utility and teamfight potential, so if they're able to smash lane, they get way too easy of a time transitioning that lead into a win, as the win condition path is clear and super simple and easy to execute. It's literally win lane because you pick TK into a melee champion, then group and fight over objectives until you win the game. Nothing fancy or hard to execute. Top lane TK isn't even expected to save his own team with his W. It's just a bonus if it happens, probably an accident due to a misclick to be honest. As we all know, TK has been causing a lot of frustration for top laners lately, which sparked my interest in starting a new series based on how to beat the current OP picks of the patch. With how many OP champs there are right now though, I think I'll need some help deciding which one should be featured, so please leave a comment below with which champs you think should debut in this new series. Before I move to the jungle list, I would like to mention that Karthus received a hotfix change that removed the nerf to the AP ratio on his ult. This didn't impact his jungle ranking, but the nerf to his ult base damage did destroy his mid win rate. The fact that this kind of collateral damage hit mid Karthus seems only fitting for a champion best known for hitting R to kill one person, then randomly getting a triple kill. They also removed the nerf to Master Yi's Q bonus damage, as it would have been overkill as he already got hit quite hard just based on the attack speed nerfs impacting his early game so much. I'd like to thank Riot Games for this one though, as it saved me from a potential failed prediction, as he would have gone to B tier instead of A tier if the Q nerf had actually gone through, so thank you. Moving on to the jungle list itself, we have Amumu, Volibear, Vi, and Nunu in S tier. Rammus fell down from S to A tier this patch due to the nerfs to his late game damage having a larger impact on his overall effectiveness compared to what we initially thought, which, reflecting on it now, makes sense. What wins in solo queue is damage. No matter how long taunt lasts, you cannot guarantee your first time Ezreal will land his abilities. It's more reliable to do the damage yourself. So despite Rammus being pretty much a pure tank, this is why he fell down to A tier from some late game damage nerfs. Zac is the only other change to the jungle tier list itself and is being moved from B tier to off the list. His mini rework completely flubbed his already mediocre win rate, but I'll have more to say on this during the QA portion, so stay tuned. As for correct predictions, we did correctly place Warwick in A tier after his Q healing buff. Due to the popularity of tank junglers, it's actually a fairly nice buff, as tanks early on have trouble dealing with increased healing as they often don't have the damage to get through it, causing his early game to be much better. Lastly, we were also able to correctly predict Gragas moving from dumpster tier to trash tier, despite the many direct and indirect buffs he received lately. The champion itself just has a lot of issues jungling in my opinion, because Riot is attempting to keep both his tank/brawler playstyle and his AP one-shot style, meaning that they can't really fully commit his power budget to make either one particularly good. It's gone to the point where, like Ryze, I don't know if changing his numbers all the time is going to make him balanced. Riot needs to decide if Gragas is going to be a drunk fat guy body slamming you, or a drunk fat guy with a wizard head throwing magic barrels at you, or else he's just going to remain a drunk fat guy in a trash can. Starting up in mid lane, we have the same S tier roster in Malzahar, Lux, Neeko, Ahri, Vel'Koz, and Morgana. We do have a new addition to A tier though, and that's Pyke mid. He's been one of those picks that's been sleeper strong for a decent time now, kind of dipping in and out of popularity patch by patch. Though normally we don't add in champions with such a low play rate to the tier list, Pyke's popularity and win rate has spiked recently due to how well he performs versus the current mid meta, so we're making an exception here due to the pure amount of YouTube comments that we received on our last video mentioning why he's not on the list. But actually, it's mostly because his priority is rising in solo queue quite a lot. Pyke is particularly good versus some mobile squishy ranged champions, which are very common in mid lane right now, such as Vel'Koz, or especially Lux, as Pyke will execute even through her massive shields. So if you're a mid laner who likes playing assassins, but is tired of boring farm lanes versus safe champions like Lux, try out Pyke with Tiamat Rush, and then Mobies for insane roam potential and the full lethality. The The added bonus of learning Pyke is that you can actually play him in your off roles as well in top lane or even support. Instead of being that mid laner that everyone hates who picks brand off-role support, then goes 15 deaths, but then has the audacity to type in chat, "If only you let me mid lane, we would have won this game." Pyke is particularly good versus some mobile squishy ranged champions which are very common in mid lane right now, such as Vel'Koz or especially Lux, as Pyke will execute even through her massive shields. So if you're a mid laner who likes playing assassins but is tired of boring farm lanes versus safe champions like Lux, try out Pyke with Tiamat Rush, and then Mobies for insane roam potential into full lethality. In bot lane, we had a hotfix where Vayne's ult now properly gives her passive movement speed instead of removing it. This actually didn't impact her win rate though, as the reduced movement speed may have actually been saving Vayne's from tumbling in and dying 2 seconds into the teamfight. For the bot lane list itself, we were pretty spot on to move Sivir into S tier, as she's currently far too consistent with how well she scales and how hard it is to punish her perma-pushing lane style. She is joined by Jinx, Miss Fortune, and Ashe in S tier. Draven was the only champion changed this time around for the bot lane patch update, and was moved from S tier to A tier. This happened due to the bug fix to his ultimate, where it now properly receives reduced damage for every target hit. Though this may seem like a small nerf, it hurts reliability to snowball in the lane phase, as he can't just ult someone in the middle of the wave, and then auto them twice for a free kill. He's gonna have to auto them 3 times now instead, which is apparently complicated enough that it dropped his win rate by a good margin just from having to do this. Not only that, but one of the more difficult aspects of Draven is team fighting, because if you drop one of your axes, you're gonna deal next to 0 damage. And now that his ult doesn't chunk an entire team on its own, he's actually required to juggle his axes during teamfights to get kills, which is really gonna hurt Draven players. Lastly, we have the support list, but unfortunately, we don't have any updates for this list, as we had correctly predicted the few changes that happened last patch. So in S tier, we still have Sona, Nautilus, Lux, and Janna. Janna with her new E is someone I would like to briefly talk about, as she's extremely strong at the moment. Though in her case, she did lose some of her laning power due to the reduced W damage late game, but in return, the amount of absurd utility she got, and uptime on her E in teamfights is just crazy strong. During the teamfight phase, it's now incredibly difficult to kill any carry she's trying to protect. No matter how bad the Janna player actually is, that shield is just up way too often and it's just too big late game. Give me an AFK Janna in lane over a Blitz, Alistar, or Leona any day, because if I lose lane to those champs, I know they're gonna throw with a bad engage at some point. While my Janna, if she just keeps playing passive and AFK, is still gonna provide amazing teamfight utility without actually having to do anything in comparison. For our first question of the Q&A portion, we have Proxio from Discord who asks, what's the deal with the top 5 S tier junglers being Aftershock users? Is Aftershock busted in the jungle? Aftershock as a keystone is definitely strong from the jungle, as it has a long CD and you only ever use it when you need it most, while in lane, sometimes you proc it in small trades, then don't have it up during an all-in. This isn't to say that it's Aftershock specifically that is busted in the jungle, it's just that it's the keystone of choice for tank or engage style junglers who happen to be strong right now. So it would be more accurate to say that the engage style champion to scale well are currently strong at lower levels of play, especially because most of them are easy to execute. Aftershock is currently not strong enough to dictate an entire meta, unlike the previous version of Conqueror, where the jungle meta was decided based on which champion abused this keystone the hardest. Personally, I'm super happy we're out of that meta. It was so fun guessing which Hecarim one trick on either team was going to die at the scuttle fight and then flame their teammates. Our second question comes from Elias on Discord who asks, I don't get why Irelia is B-tier in low-ELO and S-tier in high-ELO. How much you can carry with her depends on your ability to do good plays, right? Because she's hard to play doesn't mean that she can't carry a lot more than she's supposed to. I assume you put her in S-tier high-ELO because they play her better, which I understand, but in low-ELO, people can play her exactly the same as high-ELO players would. In that case, wouldn't she have an S-tier carry potential in low-ELO despite remaining in B-tier? So this is a bit of a lengthy question, so I'll try to break it down. Does Irelia have high carry potential in low elo? Short answer, yes, she definitely does. The problem comes from the part where you mentioned that low elo players can play her just as well as high elo players. If this were true, because Irelia is truly a strong champion, they would have climbed by now, wouldn't they? This would lead you to think that sometimes people are held back in rank, not because of mechanics, but by macro play, so they can be good at laning for example, but still lose. This is where your perception that a low elo player can play Irelia mechanically just as well comes from, but to be frank, that viewpoint is pointless in terms of the tier list despite it being true on occasion. The reason for this is that it's a recommendation for which champion to climb with. So if Irelia the champion doesn't close out games, then it's a garbage suggestion no matter how many montage highlights they put up on Reddit. You want consistency for climbing, not someone who goes 10-0 sometimes, but more often than not 0-10. And at low elo, having both consistency in mechanics and consistency in macro play just isn't going to happen, because if they had those two things, they'd have climbed by now. Similar to champs like LeBlanc, the reason Irelia's win rate is low is not due to mechanical errors causing losses. Although to be honest, a lot of the times it is. It's also that they're harder to close games out on, because they have high execution and need consistent teamfight / macro knowledge. Hopefully that helps answer your question. Our next question comes from Tomvis on YouTube, who says, "Good tier list, but why characters like Sylas or Pantheon are better in high-ELO?" So many people may have guessed why Sylas is good in high-ELO, but to keep it short, it's because he's strong but difficult. The player needs to be good enough mechanically to do his combos well, while also having good enough game knowledge to use his ult properly, teamfight well, which is tricky on him, and abuse his amazing lane priority. The amount of Sylas bloopers I see even in Diamond, where I see him just E in and die instantly in a fight, are way too many to count. It's gone to the point where it's pretty much expected. Pantheon though, funny enough, is a champion most people think is stronger at lower levels of play, but at one point, Dopa actually tried to learn him as a TF counterpick and gave up because he said he was too hard. So why would he say that about an easy to pick up champion? It's because Pantheon suffers from having one of the worst late games ever, meaning you need extremely strong knowledge on how to close out a game quickly. And since lower level games drag on, Panth just ends up getting outscaled. In high-ELO though, both the Panth player themselves and the rest of the team know how to push early leads and close out before Pantheon gets outscaled. So you can consider high-ELO for Pantheon kinda like ELO Heaven, where when he pings a dive for a tier 3 tower, the rest of the team's gonna back him up like a squad of gladiators right out of 300. But in low elo, when that same Pantheon pings for a tower dive, his team is likely to just watch him man drop in on his own, die, and then spam ping question marks on his dead body. Who am I kidding? That happens in every elo, just more often when it comes to Pantheon and lower elo. From Instagram, we have a question from M White, who asks, "But the Zac rework, reverting him didn't improve him at all?" Yeah, no. To my own surprise, it did not. In fact, it made him even worse. From my understanding, his ult revert and the W damage had some bugs that were reported on PvE, but still went through, so he's actually trash tier, which I'm okay with, as they still haven't fixed that stupid bug where he's running out of the sky at you, or the one where he starts swimming at you while he's slingshotting. Every single Zac main uses this to look like a complete dumbass as they slingshot at you from fog, and it's so distracting I always forget to flash. Either fix that bug or leave Zac in whatever tier they left Gragas' dead body in. So realistically, until they patch him, he is not going to make a comeback. Our last question comes from Mean Pervy on Facebook, who asks, "Why isn't Sejuani S-tier when Amumu and Rammus got nerfed?" This is actually a good fundamental question, since tank junglers are in style this season. One might think that if one of those champions were nerfed, the next best tank jungler would rise in popularity. It makes sense. The only issue is that champion strength doesn't always work like that. Tank junglers got so strong recently because Riot just kept buffing their runes, itemization, and the champs individually. They did not rise in popularity due to natural meta needs, even if the scuttle changes did help them. They would not have been so powerful without these overbuffs. The reason I bring this up is because without the meta actually supporting the tank junglers, if one of them gets nerfed, all it will do is bring Rammus down to Sej's level, for example. Unless she was directly being countered by Rammus, which just isn't the case right now. Hypothetically though, if assassin junglers were popular because they were used to counter and snowball on mage mids, then if for example Rengar got nerfed, please do it Riot, then Kha'Zix's priority would actually increase as the role needs to be filled in the meta. Currently though, the tank jungler role isn't a necessity team count wise, so if one is nerfed, it's not going to impact the rankings of the others. Thanks for watching our tier list update video and Q&A for patch 9.11. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or go to our Discord server in the link provided where you can ping me in our tier list discussion channel. Don't forget to try out Mobalytics today at mobalytics.gg, and I'll see you summoners out on the Rift.